Developing the Leader Within podcast, leading beyond limits.
Welcome back, everyone. If you haven't subscribed, please do so right now, as it'll help us get our show to others and help us get to our next milestone. Today, I'm excited to be speaking with Sheila R. Carmichael. Sheila is a neuroscience-based leadership development and executive coach for directors and VPs. She's an ICF Master Certified Coach, a speaker, and the author of Presence, which is so on time because that's the word I picked for my new year. Sheila, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Enrique. Happy to be here.
Outstanding. And we're happy to have you. And folks, we will be speaking about the leadership blind spot holding you back and why you can't see it. Before we get into that conversation, Sheila, tell us a little bit about you that maybe the audience may not know.
Well, you gave them quite a good setup. Thank you so much. Um, Here are a couple of things they may or may not know if they haven't visited my profile or, website and things like that. I have spent, Enrique, over 30 years in different Fortune 500 companies, and my role was around talent management. So I was in the room with folks who had to make the decisions for the next level of individuals and talent, right? Whether they are getting promoted, taking on a larger scope. And this is across multiple different industries in the Fortune 500. So that means I heard a lot. Heard a lot of conversations behind the closed doors, whether it was in a group setting or one on one with leaders, where they were saying things that intrigued me. They don't have executive presence, and nobody knew what that meant. And that was what was hindering them from getting the next role or a larger role. So that was my passion spot, especially for directors and VPs, because the higher you go, the less feedback you get. People give you this vague feedback, and that's where the coaching plays in, because then I can help you see what others see and are not telling you, and what you're not seeing for yourself. It's a blind spot, yes, but it's not a deficit to fix. That's my key thing. A lot of times we think we got to develop something. No, it's just untapped potential that we can re-engineer and reframe and unlock and bring out the best you for people to recognize who you are, your executive presence as a leader.
And talk about untapped potential. You often say that what stalls talented leaders isn't a lack of skill, but
No,
what they can't see. In your
exactly.
experience, what are the most common blind spots that show up for directors and VPs at moments of transition or increased responsibility? And why are they so hard to recognize without outside support?
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful question. There are so many blind spots, and they're very unique to the individual based on their experience, um, the environment they're working in, the structure, the organization, the culture, their own culture. But there are three that are pretty common. And the first one I'll share with you is what I call, Enrique, they are the over reliance on their technical expertise. Now, these are leaders who get promoted because they were brilliant at what were doing, right? But now they're being evaluated for how well they enable others to do brilliant work. But they keep defaulting to their success playbook, their own competencies that got them there. And as we've all know, Marshall Goldsmith says that's not going to get you there. So that's one. Another one is the underestimating of their own organizational shadow. Now, by that I mean at this level, every word you say, every expression that you faced, every interaction, everything that you are showing on your face, every meeting that you skip or attend, it's all getting interpreted. Now, leaders often have no idea how much weight their presence carry or how their mood sets the emotional tone for the entire teams. And I'd like to give you an example of this because this one shows up quite a bit. I remember coaching a director of operations, and for the sake of confidentiality, I'm just going to call him Patrick. And he prided himself on his open door policy. But here's what he didn't know. When he was stressed, he had the habit of checking his phone while people were talking to him, and just at a glance, those 2 seconds, to him it was nothing, but to the team, they had started calling him dismissal look. Now, they actually warned each other, and that's what team members do. They talk with each other, right? And they would say things like, don't go to Patrick today. He's doing his phone thing, right? He was shocked when we uncovered this. One small unconscious behavior had undermined the very accessibility he thought he was creating. Now, I'll move quickly to the third one, which is confusing being liked with being respected. Because many leaders unconsciously avoid the difficult conversations that would actually build stronger relationships and trust because they're optimizing for comfort instead of clarity. Right? I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to cause any conflict. And it's because they want to be liked. They probably won't tell you that, but that's what I hear in my coaching sessions, right? I'm trying to fit in. I don't want to be rude or disrespectful. And it gets in the way. If we were to reframe that, can you imagine what would happen? Your respect would actually increase because you're being more honest. Now, I'm not saying deliver it in a brash tone or egotistical way, but I'm saying be a human leader of other humans. They want to know, right? And this is why I, I, I can't say these are patterns because they're very unique to each person, right? But keep in mind what I said earlier, Enrique, the higher you go, the less honest feedback you get. And people start managing you instead of telling you the truth. And you need someone from the outside of your system, someone who has no political, agenda with you, to hold up that mirror and help you see what everyone else around you is seeing and not telling you. I get passionate about this.
Yes, that's a very powerful. And as you were talking about presence, right? I said I picked presence as my word. You got to be careful how you pick these words, folks, because I could have been present at an event yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Although my representative or the person I represented was not there, as you mentioned, you have no idea how
No
much
idea.
your individual presence has an impact on those there.
Mm-hmm.
And it checked me. And now that's done, right? I can't go back to yesterday and do it, but I'll consider that for the next time to say, you know what, this may not be about you. It may be about somebody else that needs to see you. So good one on that. Now, you spent, and you mentioned this earlier, 30 years plus inside Fortune 500 organizations across 7 industries. How do leadership blind spots evolve as leaders move higher in the organization? And what makes the director to VP level such a critical inflection point for either breakthrough or stagnation?
Yes. Oh, I love this question, Enrique. Thank you for asking it. At the individual contributor level, the blind spot tends to be skill based, right? There's gaps in the technical knowledge or the execution. But at the manager level, they shift into interpersonal dynamics. How you delegate, how you give feedback, how do you manage conflict. But at the director to VP level, okay, something fundamentally changes. The blind spot becomes the identity base. It's no longer about what you do, it is about who you are as a leader and how you show up strategically. Now, can I give you an example of this? Because this is really powerful and very important. I had a client, again, for anonymity, we just call her Angela. Okay. She was director of marketing who was technically flawless. Her campaigns performed, her team hit every deadline, her presentations were polished, but she kept getting passed over for the VP spot. And when we dug in, we discovered that her blind spot showed up in executive meetings as a quote unquote reporter, then a strategic partner. And she'd present the data beautifully, but never offered a point of view on what business should they, what they should be doing. She was waiting to be asked. Meanwhile, her peers were walking into those same rooms saying, here's what I think. This is the way we should go. And here's why. Angela had to shift from proving her competence to demonstrating her strategic judgment. Now, that one shift got her promoted in 6 months. This transition is so critical. It's an inflection point because the game completely changes. You're moving from managing functions to influencing systems, from executing strategy to actually shaping it, and from being in the room where decisions are being made to being the reason certain decisions do get made. The leaders who stagnate at this level are, Enrique, they're just often playing an old game, but exceptionally well. They're high performer directors, but they haven't quite made that internal shift to think, communicate, and show up like an executive. They're still trying to prove their value, their output, rather than demonstrating it through presence and strategic influence. Those are the ones that are really, the breakthrough is really powerful. And when they show up and they say, yes, I need somebody to help me uncover what this blind spot is, because it's a blind spot for a reason, right? You can't see it, you're too close. They recognize that the same strength that propelled them into becoming this, new next level leader is what could be holding them back. And they're willing to transform. They're willing to build relationships with those strengths versus holding on to an old success playbook.
Now, folks, if you don't listen to anything else, this right here, if you're looking truly to get promoted to the next level, it takes next level thinking and expression for those that are in charge of seeing that transition for you to be okay with them deciding that you're the person. You
Yes.
cannot just provide data. And I love that example. Yes, by all means, provide accurate, timely, and beneficial data. That is your job as a technician. But if you cannot couple that with how it's impacting the company both now and the future, don't expect it because it's not coming your way. So great example
Yeah.
there of how that truly works. Now, your proprietary echo listening intelligence framework reframes how leaders listen. How does listening differently beyond just hearing words help leaders uncover blind spots faster and make better decisions with greater organizational impact?
Oh, Enrique, thank you for asking that and phrasing it that way. Now, the echo listening intelligence is not mine. I'm actually using this assessment that belongs to someone else. And the reason I am because one of my peers said, Sheila, I want you to check this out. And immediately when I took the assessment, which I'm an assessment guru, it only took 10 minutes, which I loved. It was back behind neuroscience, which then made me even more geeky about it. And it was so truth telling. So kudos and shout outs to Allison O'Brien, who designed this, facilitated this, and did everything with this. I want to give her credit and her team at the Echo Listening. Oh my goodness. I have been using this with leaders for any and every coaching session I have because it's that value. Because most leaders are listening to respond, right? They're already formulating their answer while the other person is still talking, which we all know that's not good. And that is actually, Enrique, that is transactional listening. It keeps you trapped in your existing mental models. But when I teach leaders to listen for what's not being said, like listening for emotions beneath or the word patterns about the conversations, or maybe there's different communication things, this echo listening instrument helps us to identify what are your listening habits, because we all have them. There's 4 core habits, and what's unique about your particular profile. And it helps you with understanding where it is a wonderful strength, but that strength, like a superpower for a Marvel Comics hero, can also have some kryptonite on it. So it can get in your way. And it helps you to name it. Once you name it and understand it, guess what, Enrique? You'll start listening and understanding others, because when we walk through that, you're going to not only see for yourself, you're going to build strategies for working with your preference and others' preferences. And we're going to set out a specific action plan for you. One thing to start in the next 7 days. It's powerful. It's powerful. I worked with this assessment because we have a tendency to default to what we like and what we prefer. And that's okay. But when you're not aware of what that is and how it may be getting in your way, that's a gap. That's a gap. And that's where we can uncover the blind spot and finally address it. Right? You can't uncover it if you don't address it. And leaders who, Enrique, when they do what I call it strategic listening, they start picking up on these signals early and they catch where this misalignment is at before it becomes a conflict. They can hear the resistance underneath that compliance, and then they can sense when their team is telling them what they want to hear versus what they need to hear. And I know I'm assuming you've been through that, because I know I have, right? Because you could tell there's some nuance about it that tells you They're not telling me what I need. They're telling me what they think I want. That's where better decisions come from. They're not from the more data, they're from the deeper understanding. So when you strategically listen, you can understand differently.
Absolutely. And leaders, if you are getting what you think you want to hear from your people, it's because they've already recognized that you don't listen to anything else. And that's just it. And when you have one way of listening and don't explore all the ways of listening, you become an obstacle for your folks.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I tell you, if you can get a hold of this dynamic tool, please do so. And this is why we have Shayla on the show, to explore these things as leaders so that you can develop your listening techniques and skills. Because if there's anything, now Shayla, back in 2020, before the pandemic, I had done a survey.
Mhm.
Listening was number one across the board for gripes and complaints of people concerning leaders. And here we are, 6 years later, still talking about listening. It is a thing that must be addressed as a leader. And even if you think that you're one of those leaders that has this in the bag, that might be a blind spot. So go ahead and explore some more, because we can't get this all right all the time, right? Now, your 90-day leadership intensive is designed for transformation, not theory. What typically changes for leaders over those 90 days that they couldn't achieve through traditional leadership training or self study?
Oh, now I'm going to get really excited and passionate about this. This intensive, and the reason I call it intensive is because we're going to work with each other every 2 weeks. And it's not training, right? It's going to give you some of that. A lot of times people think coaching is training or mentoring or advising. Okay, there'll be snippets of that in the process, but it's going to give you the transformation because we're going to coach and focus on the shift that no workshop could ever give you and no book could ever replace. So, first, real time pattern interruption. We're going to be looking for live situations, the actual board presentation that you're preparing for, maybe, or the difficult conversation, or maybe you've been getting kind of a common play of feedback. So this is not you getting learning theory. This is us rewiring the behavior for when the moments really matter. Okay. Second, we're going to accelerate your self-awareness. Now, this is through different tools or assessments and feedback. It could be a 360. Definitely we're going to have the listening echo because that's standard in my packages. Some ongoing dialogue, things like that. And often for the first time, people have gotten this or they hadn't had it in quite some time. And now they are seeing the story that they've been telling themselves. That's important, and also what others have been trying to tell them that they weren't paying attention to. And this is going to help you with actually having data for the gap that we can leverage for your breakthrough. Now, the third is and it's actually really the most important, is a sustainable identity shift. Now, I'm not trying to change you. I tell all my clients, look, I am not here to make you somebody who you're not, but I am here to help you find out who you really are. And usually there's a tension because we're playing to or conforming to an organizational, cultural code, whatever it might be, some formative year scripts that's got us there, right? It was successful, but we're not playing to our true selves. And I do this to help you play to that. especially in these corporate environments. Can you imagine? I worked at an organization that had over 400,000 people. That means there were over 400,000 personalities globally. And then you have what's operating within regions, you have what's operating in departments, you have what's operating just within the team. There's layers to these cultural dynamics. But you're built in a way that neurologically you're going to have a default. That's where most people have heard that, you know, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. It's because you're sensing something that's a tension. You're either thinking it, you're feeling it, you're sensing it, and it kicks in. So you don't even realize it's happening when it's happening. And that's why an executive coach needs to be there to help show those out in new ways, especially when you're under pressure. So self-study actually keeps you in your own head, but training you in the room with people who you don't have that context, right? And then, but coaching meets you exactly where you are and helps you to become what you need to be in your specific role with your specific challenges at the specific moment in your career. It's not a cookie cutter approach. It's a framework I apply, absolutely, but I'm tailoring it to you.
And I love that you use the word specific, because sometimes when you take a picture, you snapshot a moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
It only represents that time, doesn't represent the time before, and won't represent the time after. And a lot of times we try to address the person at the moment. And sometimes we make judgments at the person at the moment, and we don't continue to explore continuous. Our life is continuous until it's not, and so should be the trying to figure out who we are at the moment and where we want to go, and the relationship between those two. So I love that you use the word specific, because it is the starting point, but only a coach can get you to the end and even farther, right? And sometimes you'll have these goals, these markers in time, in the future, that you hope to be at. And with a coach, you may surpass two or three of those times, right? And so that's
Yeah.
why I love, not only as a coach, but love having a coach and love supporting coaching, because that's truly what happens. Now, in the line of coaching, you help leaders turn invisible barriers into competitive advantage. For a director or VP who senses something is off but can't quite name it, what's the first mindset shift or behavior you encourage that opens the door to clarity, confidence, and forward momentum?
Another powerful question, Enrique. The first shift is moving from judgment to clarity, right? We will judge ourselves. We're our worst critics, right? We do that. And when something feels off, most leaders immediately go to a fix it mode, or worse, they start self-criticizing, mode, and they think, what's wrong with me? Why can't I figure this out? I should be able to handle this. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that from executives. And it's not limited to just directors and VPs, that's all the way to the top. Okay. Here's the thing, that judgment, Enrique, it closes you off from the very insight that you need. Instead of judgment, what I do is encourage leaders to get curious about the discomfort, and ask yourself. There's some fabulous questions that coaches, especially, I'm going to say I give, so, that really wakes this up. And that is, what is this tension trying to teach you? And maybe asking yourself, what am I avoiding looking at? That's a tough one. Or where am I working harder instead of differently? Notice I didn't put any value around that, any judgment around. I'm giving you the opportunity to raise your awareness, right? For you to decide, because who knows you better than you? I truly believe all my clients are their best subject matter experts. So I'm gonna default to you. I'm gonna help you find you better. And then here's the behavior I definitely recommend is to get some feedback, especially the feedback that you are afraid of hearing. Pick one trusted person. This could be a peer, a mentor, a direct report, and ask them this: what's one thing I could do differently that would make me more effective? So, when I train coaches, I say it's a hook and a period. Don't add context around it. Just courageously throw the question out there and then listen without defending, without trying to respond. Can I give you an example of this? Because this is really, really powerful. So, okay, Director of Business Development, again, for confidentiality, I'm just going to call him Vincent. Okay. And this challenge was serious. He had asked his peer as a respected, one that he really truly did respect, and the answer surprised him. And this is what he got: you are so prepared for every meeting that there's no room for anyone else to contribute. It feels like you've already decided and you're going through the motions of inclusion. Vincent's strength through preparation had the shadow, it's a side that he'd never seen. No one had ever told him because he didn't ask, right? That single piece of feedback transformed how he ran his meetings. He started coming in with more questions instead of answers, frameworks instead of conclusions. His team engagement completely unlocked, right? It skyrocketed. And he was seen much more collaborative as a leader. So that single courageous act, curiosity, it really does two things. It gives you the data that you can actually work with, and it signals to your own brain that you're ready to grow, that you're treating your blind spots as doorways and not as deficits. 9 times out of 10, Enrique, I will tell you, the thing that feels off is actually the invitation for you to step into your next level leadership. You just need the courage to RSVP it.
Well, I was thinking about the difference between an individual team contributor and a collective team leader. They are
Mm,
two different people. You mentioned this earlier, hey, how we promote folks, talent and expertise and all that they provide to a team. But a leader is no longer an individual anything. It, it
right.
must be collective. You have to drive the fullness of your team to contribute to the solution versus you coming in there and always providing it, because I could see that, you was giving that discourse on what it looked like, and I was looking at the room in my mind and I'm like, I wouldn't want to be there. Right? I'll be the first one to say, hey, this meeting's over because I can't say nothing, right? And so it does make a difference when you approach it from the collective standpoint. But I'll tell you what, you'll never be the true leader if you continue to drive that individual component. You box everybody out. And hey, teams nowadays, they'll tell you, right? There's not that many. There used to be a time where you're like, I won't. No, there's some circles that you'll get the feedback right then, right there. And so great share. Now we could talk about all these things forever, but what do you have coming up and where can the viewer or the listener follow or support you?
Thank you so much for asking that. Oh, I'm so excited. There are several things going on right now. I'm continuing to work with, of course, directors and VPs through my signature coaching engagements and trying to help them find their blind spots. But I've also kind of tested this idea I'm formulating, which is called Presence to Lead. It's an initiative, and it's going to be an online training. So I'm still in the kitchen working a sausage and making that happen. There's a new newsletter series coming out that's going to hit next month, and it's posted on LinkedIn. So stay on the lookout for that. And of course, I've got my book, Presence Self Coaching Strategies to Ignite Your Authentic Leadership. That's already available on Amazon. And I'll drop a little whisper for the future. I'm currently in my doctoral studies for organizational leadership. So stay tuned. That book is getting ready to elevate. That's going to be the basis for my dissertation. So it's coming. And if folks want to reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn, you can go to my site, the SheilaCarmichael.com. DM me on LinkedIn for anything. I'm here to talk. Even if you just want to have, I think it's important to have a strategic discovery call or consultation because we need to make sure if we're a match. Right? We need to make sure. I don't coach everybody. I'm sorry. I know there are coaches out there that like, I don't want to turn anybody down. I need to make sure that you're ready. And you also need to make sure that I'm going to be a good fit for you as a coach, right? It's a relationship that we're going to build over time. And if we're going to hang out with each other every 2 weeks or, for 6 months, whatever engagement or strategy that works for you, we need to like each other. I'm sorry. I don't want you to feel like showing up for coaching is stressful. No, no. You should be eager to show up. Those are my clients. They're like, oh my God, Sheila, I got to tell you this now. And we get right into it. So lots of things are brewing. Stay tuned. LinkedIn is my main platform. Some things post on YouTube and things like that. But yeah, it's coming.
Outstanding. Well, folks, we're going to have all the links as part of the video and the show notes for you to support Shayla and all that she's doing, as well as what the future is holding for her. And folks, just today's episode is sponsored by the Global Trends Magazine, the Outlier Project, Bone Frog Coffee, Castle and Compass Adventures, Ascend Meditations, Chop AI, and Boomcaster. And if you've enjoyed this episode and learned something interesting about the topic covered today, make sure to like, share, and subscribe and let us know by leaving a comment. Tune in next week for another episode where we dissect leadership from another angle. And as we like to end the show, success to you.